CEE Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best ever.
If there's something you're looking for in the 814, or feeling a little bored and think there ain't no more, check out Everything at Once and allow it to be your source. It's that raw podcast that's always showing support, highlighting the scene. No need to take I-90 to Peep or 79 to see how it be. Interviewing your locals with mindsets that are global. Innovators and creators on every single upload. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
It's time to introduce this show.
The best show on the face of the planet.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in today. We want to thank our Patreon producers, Brian G., Josh W., Ian D., Nick G., and Sadie M.
Patreon, it's an awesome way to support the show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
If being on the production team is too much pressure for you, you can also send any contributions using our Venmo at Everything at Once Studios. We now want to thank all the local businesses who supported this episode. These businesses get the Everything at Once stamp of approval and are critical members of the Everything at Once community. We couldn't do it without them. With winter approaching, are there any last-minute details that you want to change or renovate around your home?
I might, but you know who to call.
Yeah! Ghostbusters!
No, Tony. No, not Ghostbusters. Solid State Construction.
Oh, yeah. Solid State.
Yeah.
Duh. Solid State takes pride in all their home remodeling projects. Solid State specializes in bathroom remodeling, kitchen renovation, window and door installation, custom design work, and more, including painting, flooring, drywall, sidewalk, decks. Get your free quote today by calling Nick at 814-397-7854. Solid people, solid product, Solid State Construction.
You know, Tony, with all these renovations from Solid State, I think we might have kicked up some bad energy around here. Yeah, oh yeah. Luckily, we know just the people to go see.
I know it this time. It's Ghostbusters.
No, Tony! Our friends at Cauldron and Thorne.
Wow. I feel really dumb right now, and I can't believe I didn't think of Cauldron and Thorne, the world's largest witchcraft and metaphysical shop, with everything a person needs to channel the spirit world.
Practice some self-care.
Find enlightenment.
Curse your enemies.
Protect yourself from your enemies.
Bless your friends.
Cleanse your space from negative energies. You can check out all the magical wares available at for these different practices we all love and enjoy at Cauldron and Thorne, 2724 West 8th Street, or online at cauldronandthorne.com.
This week, we have an incredible guest for you.
Hello and welcome, Chuck. Thank you for coming down to Everything at Once Studios and hanging out with us today. We got a special guest for you guys, Chuck Nelson, the Erie City Council President. Our highest ranking member of political office that we've ever had in here. Thank you for stopping by to hang out with us plebs on the street and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, so that's a 1 year that I've been in this office of president. So I think you just interviewed Jasmine. I'm pretty sure she's our next president. So your status will move up a little bit. As soon as
look at us go.
No, I'm excited to be here with you guys. I've watched a few of your shows and
thank you.
Yeah, it should be. I think it's gonna be a fun time.
Cool. Oh, yeah.
Well, let's get right into it then, man. So I know a little bit of your background. I met you at a fundraiser, and you told me that you were a pastor at the church. I can't recall the name right now, but it's on 9th and Peach, 10th and Peach.
Yeah, 10th and Peach. Peach right between 10th and 11th. Yeah.
And I primarily know that church as the upper room.
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I think of that church.
Yeah. So I pass, it's a church, and that's usually how I describe it when people are, when I usually just tell them, that church when you're driving on Peachtree with all the homeless people out front of it, that's my church. I'm the homeless pastor.
Right.
So yeah, I pastor the church that's there, and then I chair the board for the upper room. So we have a very close relationship with that ministry, and this past week, the last 2 weeks. Until this morning, we hosted our neighbor's place. So we had 40-something people sleeping in our basement. I've been waking up every morning at 5-something and serving them coffee for a couple hours to get them out the door. It's a pretty fun ministry. And then because the church is primarily college kids and homeless folks, which are probably the two weirdest demographics put together.
Interesting.
We fund it by we use that tagline of being in the zip code with the lowest median household income in the nation. And we host short-term mission trips from like rich suburban churches.
Oh, wow, cool.
They come here and they pay for an experience where we plug them into every nonprofit in our community, and we make enough revenue off of that to keep the ministry going.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is super, super cool. And I know I'd imagine that right now is probably getting towards your busy part of the season.
For literally everything in my life, yeah. It's budget season on city council. I got... it's Advent for church. We hosted the overflow for 2 weeks right in the middle of that. And then my family keeps me on a pretty tight social schedule this time of year.
I'm sure it's getting crazy. And it's not as easy to be homeless during the winter as it is during the summer. So I got to imagine there's a lot more people coming.
Oh, yeah.
And staying the night and getting coffee in the morning and hanging around the area looking for some help.
Yeah.
So being so immersed in that population, what do you think that city council can do to kind of help that stuff?
Yeah, a lot of those services end up coming from the county. So I mean, but one of the things that got me into politics was just I have such a unique firsthand view. It's not my lived experience. I don't come from this background, but I have such a good firsthand view of what the struggles are of it.
Sure.
And so that's one of the things that actually got me into city council was that they'd passed an ordinance that I haven't been able to reverse yet. I hadn't had the votes, and but nobody enforces it anymore. But that panhandling and loitering ordinance that passed a little while ago. One of the guys on my church, he'd been out on probation. And he got his probation revoked over panhandling.
Dang.
So he spent 3 months in jail for asking people for change outside of Arby's. It's the kind of thing where but if you just think it's $100 slap on the wrist,
right.
Then, and you don't see that aspect of it, and you don't understand that a PO will look at that and say, well, it's getting close to winter and he's homeless, so wasn't it better just to put him in jail for 3 months? Like there's these aspects where I'm like, dude, he would have done something so much worse if he just wanted to go to jail.
Yeah.
Like he needed money because he was asking for money because he needed money. He wasn't trying to go to jail.
Yeah.
So it was actually that ordinance is what drove me into running. I was talking to a guy, and actually Jim Wirtz, I'll just reveal it because he's running for state senate now, and hopefully he brings that home to us.
Yeah.
So I was talking to him because our kids were the same age. It was my first time meeting him, and we'd had a couple drinks, and I was telling him, he was telling me about politics stuff, and I was like, at the end of the day, I was like, listen, man, you guys, you're not actually fixing stuff. Even the Democrats, you don't even realize what's happening downstream with some of these decisions make. And I gave him that example because it was fresh.
Right.
And I was like, so I mean, that's 7 Democrats that put that in place. Screw y'all. Yeah. And then I talked about a bunch of other systems that were in place financially that hold the city back and put us at a disadvantage, how, wealth is extracted from this community. And he's like, yeah, so more than
most of the people out there.
Yeah, why don't you just go fix it? And there was a few more conversations, maybe a couple more drinks that got me a point being like, okay, I can do
this.
That.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because you see a lot of, I'm sure that resolution was put in place with good intention.
Yeah.
I'd imagine, you know what I mean? They want to clean up the streets. They don't want people bothering pedestrians and stuff like that, walking around, all that stuff. Makes sense, sounds great. In practice, clearly is causing a huge problem with people that are trying to struggle back into society. You know what I mean? Reintegrate themselves with very limited resources and be able to be self-sufficient and provide and do whatever it is they need to do to not be in those positions anymore.
Yeah, the motivation was obvious. There was a woman that was stabbed because of an aggressive panhandler. The good news is that stabbing was already illegal, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, a little bit overkill there.
Yeah.
Couldn't have just got him for that.
Yeah.
I think there's like that goes back to I mean, we've talked about this with I can't remember which guest on the show, but a while back. Like there's like maybe like an unwarranted fear connected to something like homelessness that would make someone feel like they're representing their constituents properly by doing something to like put them in their place.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe I've got I've got natural advantages on that. Like I'm comfortable walking down a dark alley, and I'm probably not comfortable my daughter's walking down a dark alley. Like, and maybe I'm unhealthily confident walking down a dark alley. I used to be like a college wrestler, but that was 20 years ago, so I probably shouldn't be walking down dark alleys anymore.
Right. Most dark alleys I feel like are pretty safe around here for the most part anyway. So even as a smaller person, there's not really much concern for me walking down a dark alley or even like just a regular street or anything around here. But situations do happen, and people are down on their luck in this area, especially in that zip code that you represent. People are going through hard times, and people, I've been thinking of that. I heard this somewhere, I don't remember where recently, but the only difference morally from people that are standing and telling people that something that they're doing is wrong is that they haven't been pushed to the same limits as the person that is actually committing that behavior.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I probably wouldn't stab anybody right now, but I also am not in a position where I feel like I need to stab somebody in order to survive or get food or find shelter or any of those things. Yeah. And I'm not saying that makes it right, but I am saying that like those kinds of situations happen, and being pushed to those extreme limits will make people do a lot of things that they wouldn't do under normal circumstances.
Yeah, yeah.
And finding that place to like forgive that and understand that like these are just normal people that are pushed to extreme limits.
Yeah, class really helps veil the vices that we all carry.
Right. So running this church and being the board member of this shelter, moving into politics, you talk with somebody who's running for state senate now?
He's running for state senate now. Now, at the time, I don't remember if he was party chair yet, but he was just some guy that got off of Brenneman's mayoral race and stayed involved at that point.
Cool. And after that talk, you felt ambitious. You went and ran. And that seems like the story for almost everybody that is like has been on council that's come down here, or any of our political guests. Like they're just like, you know what? I just fucking did it.
Yeah.
I just went out there and I campaigned and I worked really hard. I banged on 1 million doors and hung up signs and talked to all my friends and family members and their friends and family members. And now here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think some of them got the itch a little bit earlier and gave it a little more time of consideration. Like you had Susanna on here, and I bet she was thinking about it at 18.
Probably, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, and I was pretty quickly dismissive of this whole scenario, just 4 years ago. 4 years ago, that's all it was. So I mean, at 35 years old, I was like, yeah, politics, you guys
Definitely
are ineffective.
Not. Right, and looking back on it as like a pastor, when you have that hands-on experience of actually like reaching out and touching people's lives, it's hard to not find anything but apathy when you look towards government for any sort of solution or problem solving or big change. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, so often it's been so ineffective, and so much of it is photo opt up and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
There's now I think our council, I think a lot of them serve privately, and I actually brought this up at the last council meeting during my committee report because people were talking about the homeless of the season, and I went down the list of like the 7 people currently on council and a couple of them that have recently left, and I gave their rosters of things that they do privately for it, but then there's a lot of the rest of it that's not.
Sure. And you can only do so much as like one human being.
Yeah.
And I think that's the importance of government, and having the people that we have in there right now bring to the table is that people are able to get much more accomplished when they work together versus individually.
Yeah.
I went through this change personally with my work career, where I went from like a person-to-person basis of helping individuals on a one-on-one type situation to now where I'm able to work on a much larger scale and affect bigger blocks of the community at once rather than just one person. And I feel like having that one-on-one interaction and that one-on-one help is great and rewarding and wonderful, and I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it, but being able to see the effects throughout a community is something that's really powerful. And in order to do that, you can't just be one-on-one with people. You know what I mean? You need a team, you need a group, you need other people to join in and to rally to your cause.
Yeah.
And with government, now you have like the means to do it somewhat.
Yeah, and I feel like I had a lot of those. Part of the reason why I was satisfied not going into government is because I had the means to do that in church.
Sure.
You know, we had probably a dozen different people taking turns taking care of the homeless for the last 2 weeks. Most of them were young. I mean, honestly, I think there's only 2 or 3 volunteers older than me, and people getting stuff done. So I'm used to the aspect of people rallying in service. It's just usually centered around faith as a foci instead of political.
And as a pastor, do you feel like, and a Democrat, do you feel like any of those ideals cause problems internally for you?
Yeah. You know, one of the most interesting things I think right now is I think faith gets really pigeonholed into certain political backgrounds, and like the denomination I'm in literally has conservative in its name. I mean, so I'm probably definitely in the minority of my denomination, being a registered Democrat and an active one at that. But when you look at the demographics of people, the rest of the demographics are usually just as reflective. Like, for example, like you have let's say you have a black churchgoer.
Sure.
Republican or Democrat?
Democrat.
Oh, all right. So it's not about their faith on that one.
For sure.
What happens if you have a highly educated urban churchgoer?
Still Democrat.
Still okay. A rural white one?
Oh man. Yeah, he's conservative probably.
Okay. So I just point out these 3 different scenarios where and you know, I'm saying this, and this is, you know,
no, this is for education. Yeah,
generalizations.
Yeah, of course.
But sociologists will hold that line where if you have an urban, educated white churchgoer, they're probably a Democrat. Mm-hmm. It's actually if you take if you're looking at race, gender, age, if they live in diverse communities or not, and then you add church to it, the easiest one to take out and still have the same viewpoints is religious affiliation. So yeah, I'm a unique in my denomination on that. We agree on how we interpret the Bible. We agree on hermeneutics. But I'm also a highly educated urban living person that comes from an educated family. And my political affiliations reflect that more than religion.
Interesting. I've never thought of it from that approach before, but that makes a lot of sense, the way that that's probably the final straw in the influence, you know what I mean, or the lowest common factor in the influence of which political party you align more with.
Well, I might get too nerdy for your show.
No, go ahead. I love it.
So do you remember who Betsy DeVos is?
Yes.
Right?
Secretary of Education.
Right, under Trump.
And Michigan.
Yeah. She's very right wing. Her biggest political influence was a guy named Abraham Kuyper, who has his PhD in theology. All right, he was a pastor that went on to be the prime minister of the Netherlands. All right, foot in both. Very conservative theologically. Described himself as a social democrat, or depending on how you translate the Dutch, a democratic socialist. Depending on like his political views with his sphere understanding of theology and how that applied to government led him to describe himself in his lecture, the problem of poverty, as a social democrat. And Betsy DeVos, right wing, describes herself as him being a biggest influence.
Yeah.
So some of these things are just inconsistent,
right,
and people sort of projecting themselves back into a certain scenario that doesn't bear the weight of the truth.
Right.
I think it more. I don't know if I want to go down this rabbit hole.
Have fun with it.
But I think it goes back to something that I've said and stand behind for years now, which is it's problematic to just project people into 2 categories, like liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. Like there's so many nuances in what people believe that to just lump them into two separate categories is really problematic of like, you know, really defining what or who a person is or what their values are.
Yeah.
That's just something I've gotten to so many conversations with it. Like, because I can understand, you know, she might have that influence, but if more of her influences are conservative leaning, she'll go, I'm a conservative, even though this person's a, you know, a socialist, Democrat, socialist, whatever. I think that's another part of the problem, but that's probably a conversation for another time.
No, absolutely. And I think that that's a particularly interesting case, especially because a lot of her beliefs were almost libertarian in a lot of rights as far as like education goes, and it kind of destroyed Michigan. But I also, as a registered Democrat, I don't really consider myself much of a Democrat, but like a lot of libertarian ideals really jive with my personal beliefs of small government and my lack of trust towards the government and people in power to leave those responsibilities up to the market or up to the individual or the groups or the state or the city or whoever is more apt to fulfill those needs, rather than a large overpowered government that seems to fuck everything up.
I did a little bit, but the more of you guys that come on, I find myself trusting local politicians and none of the other politicians.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's because like you're on, like you're working for everybody, kind of like what Tony was saying, like for your constituents for the city, but you're still also working one-on-one with people in the community. Like you're involved in the community besides the political side of things.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a massive difference than just like being a vote
With
in a Congress.
With a bunch of money behind you that's influenced by corporations and everybody else much more than you're concerned about the constituent.
Well, not only that, just like, you know, when your job's to be on like Capitol Hill and like rubbing elbows with, you know, people that are higher up in society. And I guess that's more of a Senate thing, you know, but like you only really go into your cities or the places you need to go to like shake hands, cut ribbons, you know, get a nice photo op. It makes a big difference when you're in there every day, you know, working with the people that you're working for.
Yeah, it happens quick too. This is one of those things that when I decided to run for office, Kathy Schaaf got on me a bit. She was like, "Do you realize how much time this takes, and what that's going to take your time away from? The other stuff you're doing outside of politics is better. Why would you take your time away from better things? Like, you think you're going to do great things in city council and government? Yeah, not as good as the other stuff, you know." And that's the thing. Like, I got hung up today, solicitors meeting, and then chasing around some stuff with the redevelopment authority. You know, like I had a bunch of meetings and getting stuff ready for the budget, and I should have probably been cleaning up after our neighbor's place, because I also have a big luncheon with the upper room on Saturday, and like there's a bunch of stuff that I need to do.
Sure,
know?
yeah. Well, thank you for taking time out to come hang out with us today.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just
Really
taking time
appreciate
away
it.
from my family.
Just them, no big deal.
They have gymnastics practices.
But I do feel like it does make such a big difference too that you know, that the people that are in our city council are involved in the city and are in the city and living in the city, and none of them are these representatives that I see or that I imagine for our federal government that are just like huge piles of money that don't really have much free will.
Yeah.
Or like a walking book deal for themselves, you know?
Right. Trying to make that those speaking engagement fees.
Well, I'm still hoping to have a book come out though. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, of course. No, that's a good goal. So does politics stop here for you at city council level, or are you?
I really love fixing shit, you know?
Yeah,
And that's
dude, me too. Feels great, man.
Like this year as president, we've passed more ordinances and fixed more of the laws. Now, I mean, I've been going through trying to like compare it to previous years. I can't find anything close.
Right.
Like we probably did 10 times as much as we did no, 10's probably. We did about 7 or 8 times as much as we did last year as far as ordinances go. And they originate with council. So you know, like I just love fixing, and I could see, you know, like I've looked at some situations, and you know, like mean, Davis stuff. You look around and you're like, I think I can fix some of that broken stuff. And then some other people start like sticking their neck out there, and you're like, I think he can fix it too, though. So I don't think I have to fix it. I can keep fixing the stuff I'm fixing on my own home front.
Sure.
So there's stuff like that where I don't know if the right opportunity came around and I looked around and said, yeah, I think I'm the best person suited to fix this, then I'd put my neck out there. And then when I think that I'm done fixing stuff on council, like I don't need to do 3 terms and then ask for a reappointment and then run again for another 12 years.
Right.
I'm cool with being done soon.
Is that a thing that happens often in our city council? Because I honestly just started following city council like when we started this podcast, basically.
Yeah.
And is that a thing that happens frequently? Is people will stay on city council for an inordinate amount of years?
Yeah, we got term limits, but then you just have to take a day off and you can come back.
Right.
So like right now, Mel's term limited. Mel Witherspoon. We have a vacancy on council, so he will be done on January 1st, and then January 3rd we swear in new members of council, and we'll only have 6, and we can then swear him in after that. So, and then he can come. So his term limit would be over, and he can run for another 12 years after his appointment would be. I mean, he could go on council 26 years straight in that scenario. Now, I don't think, obviously he's not going to do it. He doesn't have another 14 years, and I mean, he's an older man.
Sure.
14 years would be statistically unlikely. But like I get breakfast with Pat Kempamiak on Fridays. I actually had lunch with him earlier this week too. He's going to be 91 next month. He spent 33 years on council.
Wow.
So we just sit there and he tells me stories about how the airport authority was started. And then he tells me like the entire then history of it. And then I sit there, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how this thing works. So I get guys around that, and I love the institutional knowledge. I like them in advising roles. But yeah, you could do plenty of years. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Ton of work. Everybody that's been down here has been an incredibly ambitious individual to take on this level of commitment to not only their work lives, their personal lives, their city council lives, their political lives, all of this stuff and all of this time. And I'm surprised that there's not like a higher rate of burnout.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked to the 3 hardest working council members.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, I might burn out.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I like maybe someday in the grand scheme of things, I'll run for city council.
Yeah.
If that happens, if it doesn't happen, whatever. I have no real plans to do that at this moment. But say it did, I couldn't imagine myself keeping that up along with all of the other things that I'm doing for longer than 1 or 2 terms.
Yeah. But I mean, you'd asked about other ambitions. I think some of the stuff we're implementing on city council, I think that we could do better execution of in the executive branch. So I mean, that's something that I've dabbled with, the idea.
Mayor.
Yeah, a matter of timing on that. We'll see. A matter of seeing if there's other people out there that are better than me to do it. So there's a lot of considerations to it, and I want to make sure my church is healthy if I step away from that. I want to make sure my family's healthy if I step away from it. So. But that's one that I probably consider more than any other office.
Yeah. Mayor would be an interesting position for sure. And I feel like I have not been impressed with any of our mayors for a long time, for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. There's...
and not to talk bad about our mayor or anything like that, but just...
Yeah, no. I'm friends with Rick Filippi, he's a neighbor of mine. He lives a block away. He came in young with a ton of ambitions, and those ambitions were going to be taken care of by the casino.
Sure.
Coming in. Well, then the casino fell through, and now you're on the hook. Senate kind of gets a tough hand on that as to, having to cut 20 cops, 20 firefighters, and, half the code enforcement. I mean, he had a rough hand. He stayed in the office. He didn't get out that much. But he made some really tough cuts.
Sure.
And then Schember has done a really, we've had $166 million of like extra money right now between the ARPA funds being $76 million and the prepayment of the water deal, which is basically just a payday loan on revenue that was coming for the next couple decades.
Right.
Taking that all at once. It gives much better security to the water authority because then we can't sell it. And then it gives us a lump sum that's going to run out like in a few months. So anyways, but he does, where he's awesome is Whereas you only saw Senate on War on the Shore when he'd lead that in.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm thinking of mostly.
Yeah.
And it was not an impressive lead-in.
yeah,
I was a fan.
he had Vanilla Ice with him the one year, right?
I remember.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I just
pretty
remember him
impressive.
singing Big Balls with like a beer in his hand on the stage, and I'm like, wow, this is our mayor. Great.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But
I like that.
I like that too. Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I'm not a huge AC/DC fan.
Yeah. So it's a musical preference.
It's
not
probably,
not a
yeah. I mean, that
political-
probably has something to do with it.
I mean, with these big acts coming to celebrate Erie, I've probably been dancing and singing a little too much. Like, my goodness, who was it that came? Not last.
Flo Rida? No.
The previous summer. Oh man, that band from Ithaca.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I'm burnt.
Anyways, I was there with my daughter and we were screaming our heads off. Anyways, but Schember has really turned that culture around. I mean, like his pens are legendary.
He really loves those pens.
Yeah, I mean, he passes them out. It's always with a big smile. My kids still think it's hilarious. They mock it a little bit, but it's mostly like in an endearing mocking way.
Sure.
Like they mock me and they bought me pens last year for Christmas.
Nice.
So that I could give them out. And I know they're mocking me. And I know they're mocking Mayor Schember a little bit. And I'm pretty sure it's because they love us both,
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, he's been a very big cultural change on that. And then he really trusts the people that he's hired to run things.
Mm-hmm. So, going back to your faith as a pastor, how does that influence your decisions in city council?
Yeah, I mean, really, so when Jesus is yelling at the Pharisees in Matthew 23, we'll do chapter and verse on that,
Ooh,
right?
here we go.
He talks to them about how they get their doctrines right. They know the proper way to tithe on their mint and their dill, but they've neglected the greater things of mercy and justice. And so that's really the words that ring in my head, is that the greater thing is mercy and justice. And how do we implement that? How do we tilt the scales that have been done in injustice? And really, like in Pennsylvania, we've got declining cities across the board, which is weird because everywhere else in the world has increasing cities. We got the fastest declining major metropolitan with Pittsburgh. Or I'm sorry, Philly. Pittsburgh's had its run. Erie is one of the fastest declining cities in the nation. Depending on where your demographics are, we might be the fastest declining.
Right.
So Pennsylvania just has very restrictive rules for cities that have caused the cities to lose resources to the surrounding areas. It's an injustice. It's a tipping of the scales that I've been actively trying to find ways to tip the scales back to help and this is, cities where white flight, redlining, where people of color have been systemically disadvantaged. And then the way the state has done it with education funding, with, taxation policies, they get further left behind here at an escalated rate, even worse than other states.
Sure.
And so my job's been really trying to find ways to show greater mercy and justice.
Okay. So rebalancing those scales and trying to be merciful and justice for the people that are down on their luck or the people that want to leave. How do we keep those people from leaving Erie? This is like the question that I've been asking myself a lot since we've got these political guests in here, is that we have a population of maybe 20,000 college students that come here every year. And to me, Erie seems like a really good place to stay afterwards, even if we just go off like housing prices alone. Like, yes, we're inflated here, relatively speaking, to what we were a few years ago, but compared to buying a similar house in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or Columbus or anywhere else, you're really looking at a huge difference. We have a positive public school system. We have a great private school system. What is it that's keeping these students away from staying here?
So one of the things, and I think Jasmine gave me a little credit for this when she was on your show, is take the cities that are growing then. If you want to grow, see what growing people are doing.
Sure.
So take the city that has done the best job growing in recent years in Pennsylvania has really been Allentown, like as far as you want to take comparable demographics to Erie.
Okay.
And then nationally, Longmont, Colorado. So I made a trip right before I got into office to Colorado. I was doing this church conference thing and doing some breakout stuff at it. And Longmont was just an hour up the road. So I grabbed a Turo and drove up to Longmont and spent the day with one of their city council members.
Cool.
And then between Longmont, I really identified 4 things that made them successful in their growth. Home rule charter, which is something I really hope we can address this year. And that sort of eliminates some of this stuff that the Pennsyltucky type of aspect of Pennsylvania uses to restrict cities.
Okay.
But home rule charter.
What is that exactly?
We're an optional third-class city with a mayor-council charter.
Okay.
It restricts what we can do for income tax. It basically puts all the burden on property taxes.
Okay.
And that depresses house values. And then it causes disinvestment in our houses. Mm-hmm. So that's why houses in Erie aren't as nice as houses outside of Erie.
Sure.
So home rule charter, we can do a number of things with that would open up the game for us to have more options for revenue and for creatively addressing our problems.
Okay.
One of the other ones was that they did at the same time was a split tier land value tax. This is really nerdy, so I mean, hopefully,
this
it's your
is why we
audience.
brought you here. This is what we want to hear. We want to understand this. We want our guests to be able, or our viewers to be able to understand this as well, because it's important.
So land value tax, usually the things that you tax are like people's work, people's capital, but usually you don't tax natural resources very much.
Okay.
And then people just use those up. So land isn't going anywhere. But capital will leave if you tax it too much. People will leave. If
Sure.
Their work and their capital, they'll leave. If you tax the capital of the homes too much, people stop investing in the homes.
Mm-hmm.
You tax their work too much, they'll go work somewhere else.
Okay.
But land can't go anywhere. And a vacant lot is bad. It's not a good thing. So if you want people there, tax the lot like crazy, but don't tax the house that they might build on it.
Sure.
Tax them at different rates. Right now, both are taxed at the same rate. Land and houses are taxed at the same rates. If you want things more efficient, more dense, more developed, you got to tax the land at a higher rate. And that's basically like giving LRTA to all of the houses. We abate taxes because we know that stops development. Mm-hmm. Well, just stop taxing them then. Just tax the land. And you can do that in Pennsylvania. So that's the other thing that Allentown got that same time was an investment zone or an improvement zone. Mm-hmm. Theirs is called a NIZ, a neighborhood improvement zone.
So you're about to talk about the CRIZ.
About to talk about the CRIZ.
Yeah. Tell me about the CRIZ. I'm curious about this.
Yeah. And let me jump back to it though.
Okay,
And then the fourth one, Longmont, made their plan for citywide fiber optic internet in 1998. Mm-hmm. At the time I took office, we had the least access to fiber optic internet of any city in the nation. 3,000 households.
We don't have fiber here.
You're about to have fiber here. You looked at the map?
I hope so. No.
All right. So
I want Velocity Net, and they refused to come serve our area.
So we had 3,000 households when I got into office. I asked them how much they were going to be expanding to. They said, we're going to double it while you're in office. I'm like, that's still the worst. You guys suck.
My man.
So long story short, I won't get you into all the carrots and sticks of the story.
I know it's a very difficult situation because of light poles in Penelec.
Oh, yeah. Pennsylvania has some Pennsyltucky stuff with utility commission. Like VelocityNet, I give them all the credit in the world for what they're doing. But we gave them some carrot and some stick. And now we're going to be up to the majority of the city lit by the end of next year. Like about 25,000 households out of about 40,000 are going to be lit.
Is that part of the new fiber grant that came through from DC or the feds or wherever that's coming through? I know it's a big deal for the county stuff.
No, they're putting all that into rural because of Pennsyltucky stuff.
Right, okay.
Like they forgot that we need it and that it's really cheap to light up a whole block, but lighting up a farm takes a lot of work.
Especially when the farm is half a mile off the fucking road.
Right, that's inefficient. So we subsidize inefficiency all the time, and that's the Pennsyltucky stuff. That's the tilting of the scales that needs fixed. Let me jump back to CRIZ.
Sure.
That was one of the big ones, and I think Harrisburg will say. I think Harrisburg was ready to give Erie a CRIZ. It's a very expensive thing. It's a very expensive economic development issue. And Shapiro was looking at reopening it. He'd point one of his guys on it. Laughlin realized that there might be an opening for it, so he started driving it. And then we went from Harrisburg giving a CRIZ to the mayor sort of delegated onto his chief of staff. And it went from Harrisburg giving Erie a CRIZ to, hey everyone, we're going to get a CRIZ here, and Laughlin's going to get it for us, and we're going to give him a CRIZ. He'll have the majority of the seats on this board, and it's all going to be his CRIZ. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point, I think Harrisburg didn't balk at giving Erie a CRIZ. I think they balked at giving Laughlin a CRIZ.
Okay.
And so if you go back to the articles that were written this summer, like they said that we would have had a CRIZ by now.
Yeah, that was the plan. I thought that was going to be a thing.
Right. But who kept saying that? It was like one person that kept saying it. It was just Laughlin. Mm-hmm. And so he overpromised, he underdelivered, he blew it. And I take some responsibility for that. Like, I should have fought harder to say, no, we're not giving the Criz to Laughlin. It's going to the city.
Right.
But that was the narrative that the mayor's chief of staff really thought that we needed to do so that he could get it for us. And the example was Lancaster. All right. Back 20 years ago, Lancaster gets a Criz, and their state senator is the one that gets it. Well, 20 years, I might be off on a couple years. I think it's 12. Their state senator, Lloyd Smucker, he's a congressman now, Republican. All right. Well, Lancaster's just like Erie. Democratic council, Democratic mayor, Democratic reps. Think about Harrisburg at the time. Corbett was the governor. The House was Republicans. So they gave their Criz to Smucker, and he said, I'll go get it for you. He was the only Republican. Everything was Republican run. Now we've got a Democratic House and Democratic governor, and we said, hey, we're giving the keys to this investment thing to our Republican. And both of them balked.
Right.
And now it's not happening. And I was telling him that the whole time.
There was a big
I wrote an op-ed about it.
There was a thing about who was going to run the Criz too. That was definitely a thing that I read about between the council, how many seats council would get to a point, and how many seats Erie Insurance or whoever would get to a point.
You're not supposed to say that part out loud. No, and the article came out. They asked me about Criz, they asked Laughlin about Criz, and then they asked the mayor, and the mayor pushed him on to his chief of staff. So she talked, and she said that here's how we're going to do Criz. And then she made a big point in the article, and I'd been fighting with her about it in private, being like, hey, we're not really going to do that. I run this. Council makes that decision, and we're not going to do that. And she made so that had happened privately. So she made two of her quotes, and I think she only had 2 quotes, were that Laughlin got 5 seats and that the mayor got 4. And the wild thing about it is that the General Municipal Authorities Act, it's 56 and 53 title and chapter, and I can't remember which one's which. It describes who makes appointments to general municipal authorities. It's just council. It's just us. They actually can't even give the seats away. They're not their seats.
Right.
It's only council. So in Lancaster, when the state senator got the majority of the seats, he got the nominations, and then city council had to approve it. Do you know how much I listen to nominations from anyone?
Right.
Like, they come in and they're like, hey, we're looking for this, and here's the guy we'd like for it. And then I say, oh, well, I know another one. I'm gonna get my guy in there. Same qualifications. I think he's actually a little better, and I can work with. I'm gonna give you my guy, but I see what you're looking for, and I'll try to find something like that.
Sure.
Like, that's how nominations and appointments work. We don't give that power away, and they just presumed that we wouldn't keep it.
Right.
Which that was a stupid presumption. So that's where the fight was. And when you look at what the filed ordinance was, you may read in the newspaper that I gave up my fight and that we went with the mayor's ordinance. We did. We amended it, and we amended it enough that city council makes all the appointments going forward, and we kept a few of their names, and had some small discussions. We switched a few of the names. They couldn't find, the mayor nor Laughlin could find a single black resident in the city of Erie.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was that they sat at a big ball or gala and basically like just appointed people from the same table. Literally, like, I was at a gala thing like a month earlier, and like 3 of the appointments from one and 2 of the appointments from the other were like sitting with them at the gala. I was like, come on, guys. Anyways, so we got 2 black residents. I didn't make those appointments because, I'll be honest, I'm still a basic white dude.
Sure.
I asked Mo and Mike, who's the best people you know. They got me this really sharp CPA because we needed an accountant for it, and they got us a regional vice president, community economic development from Citizens Bank.
Awesome.
Black city residents that were more qualified than anyone else.
Right. That's a difficult challenge too.
Yeah.
But it's good to ask others for help.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to networking and knowing people. Like, I don't fucking know everybody. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And how could anybody be expected to know anybody in a city of 100,000 people?
Yeah.
Like, and that's why it's good to have people to talk to and people to ask, and to have people that you trust to be able to get these recommendations, instead of taking the first person that's sitting at your gala table that you bring this idea up to, that says, hey, I'd love to, I could do that.
So the original question was, how are we going to make the city grow?
Right.
Right. I said, here's 4 examples from 2 different cities, and these are the ones I think I can do. And I did 2 of them this year. So when I talk about burnout and quitting, we just need a home rule charter and maybe shift a little bit towards land value
Boom,
tax. And
retired.
And I'm done on council. And I think honestly, I might get those done this year.
Yeah.
We're going to talk home rule charter.
2024.
2024, we're going to be talking a lot about home rule charter. I expect it to be. I'm hoping it'll be on the ballot in spring of 25.
Does that have anything to do with the different zoning laws around Erie and all the empty space that's above all these buildings that I see?
No, but we're addressing that too. The Planning Commission just last month addressed 6 things that could change zoning, and I'm hopeful that those get implemented here shortly.
Cool.
Yeah.
You guys are on the ball.
Yeah, I feel really confident about the direction things are going right now.
That's awesome. And I feel like right now is a really good time in Erie. Like we're experiencing this whole renaissance amongst Erie and all that stuff. Lots of good things happening, lots of positive development, and I just don't want to see it all fall apart for whatever reason. I feel like the main reason that it would fall apart is because we don't have enough fucking people and that they keep leaving. You know what I mean? And that's a really hard obstacle to tackle, you know? With all of I joined a membership. I got a membership to Ascend, the new rock climbing gym.
Yeah.
And it's fucking awesome. I love it. It's great. But you know what? That place is fucking empty.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Not sustainably full at all. At least in my opinion. I'm not a businessman, but when I go, there's like maybe 5 people in the place at the most. I've never had it be like any sort of crowd or anything like that. Maybe that's their business plan or whatever. But I don't know how we get people to participate in these businesses that are apathetic and that are lost and that are competing with Netflix in the comfort of their home and their couch.
Well, it's also an expensive place
It is also an expensive place.
in relation to how much people make around here.
It's not. I mean, Lecom charges slightly lower rates, I think, for a monthly membership.
But like it's nestled in the poorest zip code we have.
It is nestled in the poorest zip code we have, but it's also next to like the largest industry that we have. A number of the largest industries we have being Hammett and Erie Insurance.
But the people that work in those places aren't really staying in the city.
But they're driving right by it every fucking day to work.
That's the goal, is to have stuff in the downtown that make them stay after work, go before work, hit it on their lunch break, and then ideally then start living in the city. Like I live in the West Bayfront, 600 block of West 9th. Gorgeous place. And when we bought it, my wife was a stay-at-home mom, and shortly thereafter we bought it. And I was a bartender for the next 5 years. Like, I mean, that was so you could, the living isn't that bad, you know,
Right.
compared to other places.
Especially without kids, you could afford a $60 gym membership if you wanted.
Yeah. Like if I didn't have the 2 kids at that point, like I would go for the gym membership. But the goal is to keep them there. And there's so much stuff happening there to now drive that. You know, they got that cigar lounge going in. They got this like putt-putt Belgian brewery thing going in across the street from it on the 2nd floor below the
There's the new golf simulator.
five iron. I went to one of those in Cleveland after I heard about the one in here. Like, no, these are expensive, pricey things, but the people that are leaving, that they're gonna want to stay.
How are the lofts doing down there? I mean, that has nothing to do with, council.
All that
I guess.
stuff. No, it's definitely a big part of it, though. If we can't rent the apartments of their building, then like that's another driving factor of why.
But that's like
that would keep us depressed.
There's something missing that's not just, hey, we got young professionals, we got people making money. They're not going to these things even though they're cool and possibly affordable to them. We're going to put these lofts down here, that are pricier, so it gentrifies the area a little bit. But we're going to have the people. We got those young professionals. We got Erie Insurance across the street. We got Hammett. This is something that people... St. Vincent up the road. These people are going to use these. They can walk to work, They get to save on this, and that. They're not filling up. They're
I don't know if they're filling up.
They're pretty well full.
Oh, they now? Well, that's how it started. That's what I was asking.
No,
if
and
they're still
especially
filling
early on when people were like, "Oh my God, $1,000 to rent a loft or an apartment or 1 or 2 bedroom apartment downtown? That's outrageous. That's crazy."
Here's one of the big things. Like you talked about, you mentioned it in the context of gentrification, and 24 people above Lucky's got displaced on that development. Where there's now a cigar lounge. However, you also earlier brought up, what do we do about all this empty space on the 2nd and 3rd floor throughout State Street?
Sure.
Right? There's no displacement if the space is empty. and there's a lot of empty space down there to try to develop. So I mean, my expectation is that when there's that much vacant space, we're not talking gentrification, we're talking about development. And then those stats that we're talking about at 16501, yeah, there is 1,000 households with a median household income of $11,000. However, if it goes up to 2,000 households or 3,000 households, those 1,000 households hopefully will still be there,
right,
and have services around them. But the stats will shift because it'll be a more heterogeneous community. It'll be a mixed income community, and that's a healthier ladder for people to climb.
Way healthier and way better to have the mixed income for sure.
Yeah.
How do you beyond the, like, I followed it and I'm interested. I'm into the nerdy stuff too. Like, how do you get people to believe that this is gonna work? Like, that's the toughest thing, right? Like, that kind of kind of ties in with, like, religion too. Like, getting people to believe, that what they're doing is gonna be fruitful for them.
That we're not gonna have a big empty rock garage that closes, or rock climbing gym that closes down, and the Erie food hall that. That's anybody in there.
Well, that's another thing too. Like, that's a very cool area, and like, in theory, it should work.
Right.
If it was in a bigger city, it would
packed.
work. It would be packed all the time. But like, that's a place. I don't know about the lofts. I wasn't sure about that. I was uneducated. You guys educated me. I've been into the food hall. Some more times than not, there's not anything going on in there than there is, like, just all hopping and stuff. So like, how do you get people to believe? How do you get people to stay, like the kids to stay? How do the people that we have here that are professionals are obviously, for one reason or another, looking at these places, and maybe not all of them, but some of them, and going like, oh, that's a cool idea, but I'm going to go back to Mill Creek or like wherever they're living.
I feel like that's the big competition too. And I think that while you were saying that, I got like my own little answer, and it's like the school system.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Huge part of it.
I mean, Collegiate Academy is awesome.
Collegiate Academy is awesome, and they're accepting normal people.
06.
Yeah. And they're accepting non-collegiate, like, you don't have to get certain GPA or whatever they had in place.
They've got the arts program.
And they got arts programs, and they got all of the other things, but we still have, and I can't really speak to it because I don't know of the statistics or how the students are doing at Erie High or Erie Public Schools, but the general consensus or idea that's floating around, or the narrative that I'm told, is that it all sucks.
Yeah. I mean, their numbers have been improving for what that's worth. And then the cost of that has shifted. We've always been the most expensive, most highly taxed school system. And because it's illegal and unjust, they've been shifting. We're now no longer the most expensive in the county. We're like 6th or 7th. Like, we're kind of middle of the pack now. So those are things. There's charter school options. There's private school options. The private schools here are
phenomenal.
Yeah, and they're cheap. It's
right.
really surprisingly cheap. Like, when I tell people, like, I sent my kids to Luther Memorial for a while, and when I tell people what I paid for that live in other communities, they're like, oh, wow, where's that?
Right.
How does that even work? But you asked me about how that works, even whether faith or in government or like in community. In faith, we talk about in the context of faith and works, right? We talk about mercy and justice, and those are scenarios and situations, and I talk about it on Sunday mornings for half an hour, and hopefully people stay awake. And then you demonstrate it.
Sure.
And the people go and they live out their faith, and they do the works, and they feed the home, and if you can't put those two things together, so when we're talking about how's that work societally, how do we talk about downtown? Well, the faith aspect of it, like the narrative aspect of it, is like, doesn't it suck to live in Mill Creek? I mean, like, what are you going to do in Mill Creek? You're going to go up to the mall? Come on.
Right.
Come on. That was very cool when it was in the 80s and you had movies like Mallrats, but come on.
Yeah.
That's not what the kids want to do anymore.
Let's talk about the narrative of what downtown is, and talk about, what cities are, and what are things that gather us. What are beautiful waterfronts like? Yeah, I know Mill Creek has a little bit of waterfront. They keep it preserved nicely with Presque Isle. That's nice. But come on, you don't want to go to the mall.
No.
I mean, they're converting malls to nursing homes now. I mean, that's the vibe. So if you're talking about keeping college kids, Mill Creek shouldn't be getting them. Then it's a matter of the actual works of it. And that's where, like in my neighborhood, I run Porch Fest. You guys ever hear that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
For sure.
That was killer, man.
Yeah, it looked awesome.
You do stuff like that, you're walking around with a couple beers on the trolley, just walking from band to band. Like, no, man, I'm going to make my neighborhood cooler than your neighborhood.
Sure.
If you want to live in a cul-de-sac and drive 25 minutes home and you have to give people directions that involve taking 4 rights and none of the roads make sense and they're all named after trees, man, forget that. Forget that.
Right.
Change the narrative. This is cooler.
Right.
And then actually show them that this is cooler.
And I appreciate your answer to that a whole lot, because we, as a podcast and as human beings, me and Dave we try to do that kind of, we go to gallery night a couple times a year. We go to the different concerts that are around here. When there's a big band coming in at the Rook or at Basement Transmissions or whatever, we're there and I'm taking pictures. And I'm a member.
Awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that, dude. That's like the one thing I'm proudest of out of all of this stuff is my pictures, because I think that's what I'm best at. Yeah. But I'm a member of the rock climbing gym. You know what I mean? I'll go eat at food hall and see the bands that are there or in Perry Square during lunch. You know what I mean? And the dance thing that Jen's doing down there and all of the other stuff. And I think that it's also just like a matter of time thing. Like, can we sustain the net loss for long enough that it becomes a positive? And that's the way it is with like any business too. You know what I mean? Maybe not no business, but they say a lot of businesses aren't profitable until their first 3 years. Yeah. And that takes people being active, people being participatory and coming down and bringing their friends and bringing their families and showing them all how awesome all of this stuff is before it's able to actually succeed and generate revenue. And the question is can we fucking hold on long enough?
Preach it, Tony.
I think I love Erie. I've been here my whole life. But it reminds me, like just a little snippet of it. It reminds me of like an episode of Bar Rescue more than opening a new business. Like there's been declining.
With John Taffer.
With John Taffer.
Yeah,
but no, like follow me. Like this has been like the decline in population, the impact of lower incomes, of becoming like the poorest zip code, of not a benefactor of the Rust Belt, like definitely like going downhill with like that Rust Belt narrative that's pushed this area of the country downwards over the last handful of decades. It's not like we're on like a level ground and we're doing this stuff. It's like things are going down. How do we get people to stop being apathetic and say this is actually going to be different?
I got a cousin that grew up in Boston, lives in Memphis right now. I moved to Memphis because houses are too expensive in Boston. He's coming to visit next week. And when I explained to him that you can buy a nice house for $100,000 that has fiber optic internet, or odds will have it next year, and that in my neighborhood, do you know how many microbreweries and distilleries I can walk to?
Oh, yeah.
I could walk to Lavery. I could walk to Erie Ale Works. I could walk to that one from Meadville that's downtown here, Voodoo.
Right. Yep.
Right. The train spot. The brewery. That'd be a bit of a walk.
There's also the nice 6-pack house there on State across from Member and Forge.
Yep. And then for distilleries, I could walk to the Luminaire one over with the Luminary one, and then I could walk to that one over across from Frontier with the Altered State with the great music, and they got great whiskey. Like when I show him that I can walk to all of that with $100,000 house, a really, really nice house. And my house is probably like $200,000, but it's gorgeous.
Sure.
And with fast resources, and then I could walk to a ball game. Like when you get to that level of it, like it's not that hard of a sell. It's not that hard of a sell.
If you're gonna use those things, though.
Well,
and I feel like our normal population is not. They're getting more excited about those things, especially with Erie Seawolves like being awesome and the Erie Otters playing great hockey. It's hard not to ignore those things, but I feel like it's a lot easier to ignore them when you're in a shitty financial situation.
Well, it sounds like,
but you're completely right.
Well, I get what you're saying. Like it's like if it's someone from the outside looking in who hasn't lived here, who isn't a victim of the low wages that are paid here because they are consumerate of the area that we're in. You could say, oh, wow, I make a Memphis wage or whatever big city wage, and you can get a house with all that stuff around for $100,000. So you like get people in, but like, what about the East Side? You know, what about the people that are here and struggling? You know, like I totally understand the idea of you can always find people, you know, to get in to buy some of the stuff in the nicer area. But what are we doing that's going to make things better for the people that are living on the east side of town, where you're not having the porch
you don't
fest,
have 10
you don't have
breweries.
10 breweries,
Right, yeah.
you don't feel maybe as comfortable walking, you know, from different places, and that's a very large area of town in comparison to the city that we have.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about where we've had population decline, you can look at the demographics of it. Like, we didn't really have any black people move. We didn't have any Hispanic people move. We just had 7,000, you know, middle to upper middle class white people move out of the city. That's where our demographics are. If you break it down, it was, you know, people at prime earning years that were white. That's all we lost, which is bad for, I mean,
a number of reasons.
But one of the biggest things, as far as how it affects the other demographics, the people of lower, you know, financial class, is that that's money leaving our community, money that otherwise would have stayed here and been spent here. Like, when you start spending the money in this community, there's more jobs and more competition at the bottom to move their wages up. And I think we're seeing this across the board. Like, when you look at the demographics of the last 4 years on a federal, like, national level, the top 10% and the next 80%, their wages haven't really changed too much. The bottom 10%'s wages have been climbing. And I think if we grow at that exact moment, that there's greater opportunity and growth at the bottom, I think that's when you really see a flip on this, because what we've seen in a decline has really pushed the bottom down lower.
Right. And I think there's a lot of interesting things in development on the east side too, like that Chantel and Dale kind of talked. Chantel Williams and Dale. Chantel Hilliard and Dale Barney talked about, as far as big developments like a solar farm and stuff. And I know that's huge right now. Planning's kind of going crazy about making ordinances to regulate all the counties and stuff and do more solar work throughout the area. They also talked about like a fish farm and an organic farm and all these green space and all these other things that is hopefully going to be going through on the east side of Erie, which I can't imagine not being great for that area of town.
The Coke plant. Let's go there. I mean, so I expect that we're going to be condemning that soon. City will then take it, will then give it to the redevelopment authority, which what they've done at the EMI site has been notable. Sorry. And then the Port Authority so you have a toxic dump that's taking years off of people's life that'll be remediated in the next decade or two. Like, what's that going to do to that neighborhood? Now, I'm not saying that I got a solution for the next 10 years for how the east side turns around, but I mean, if there was anywhere for me to be like a speculator before I start taxing land a whole bunch more and just scoop up land to see what develops when my kids and my grandkids, like, I expect the east side's where, you know, it's going to become a very well-mixed community. And that really is my goal. Like, I want to see 5 social classes on a block. It helps people climb ladders. And I think that's really where you'll see a lot of the city turn around in 40 years. I mean, you got to take a long view on that one.
Of course. And ECAT doing all the great things that they're doing over there. I feel like there's a lot of hope over there. It's just waiting around long enough to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
And the same with downtown, hopefully, fingers crossed. I get scared when I go to the Rock Gym and it's empty and all these other places and don't see anybody there. So, guys, go join the Rock Gym so I don't feel fucking paranoid about shit anymore, okay? Please.
Preach it, Tony.
And come eat at the food hall. Just surround me with people all the time, anytime I'm walking around downtown. And I'll feel better about the world. I mean, I already feel really great about the things that are going on. And when I go to the concerts and all the other stuff that's going down, it's just like my day-to-day downtown is not as good. So if you guys could all just follow me everywhere I go, that would be perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't follow me. I don't want to. I love you guys. I don't want to see you every day.
2 people in the basement's enough.
Yes. Yeah. No, this has been super interesting, though, Chuck. Thank you for coming down and hanging out with us.
Yeah. No, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. So make sure you guys keep your eye out on City Council and what they're doing. Look for the big dramatic changes that are going to be occurring in our city. Thank Chuck and all the other city councilors that are working hard to represent us and to have our best interest going forward in our local government. And thank you to everybody who tuned in, everybody who listened, watched, all that stuff, all of our sponsors, all the people who supported us on Patreon, liked, shared, commented, subscribed, all that stuff. You guys are the best. And peace out.